Warning, this video requires a sense of humor. If you do not like making fun of Italian stereotypes, do not enjoy sarcasm, or are incapable of separating jokes from reality, this is not the video for you. Italians are a proud pizza-making people and are not going to be brought down by one goof online. Complaints registered will be marked as spam and left unread. Arrivederci, chicken parmesan, oregano.
This is the original Street Fighter, and there are less than 50 in the United States, and there are only 200 worldwide.
The year is 2002, and your name is Vincenzo. You're a bike designer at Aprilia, and Giuseppe, your boss, walks in saying via hand gestures that he saw a whole bunch of people taking Falcos and putting Street Fighter kits on them. Giuseppe then articulates via wild phalange waggles that he wants you to make a factory Street Fighter. Then Vinny, that's you by the way, gets to work converting a 2002 Aprilia RSV Melee into a naked bike. You cram the 998cc Rotax Vtwin in there to shut up all the sweaty nerds on early message boards complaining about Italian reliability, and that motor puts down roughly 126 horsepower and 74.5 foot-pounds of torque. Editor's note: I've been told that this particular motor is putting down closer to 140-ish horsepower.
Allegedly.
You then chop up the fairings, but still do your damnedest to cover the entire motor, thus defeating the entire purpose of a naked bike. Giuseppe points that out to you and you tell him to go jump in a bucket of olive oil. What you end up with is a giant naked bike with a 32.3-inch seat height, 450-pound wet weight, and capable of a standing quarter mile in 10.9 seconds. Then Giuseppe walks back in smelling like extra virgin olive oil and mimes out that he needs a special edition, so you need to crank out 200 bikes and make them look cooler. You dig up some Öhlins forks, an Öhlins shock, beefy Brembos, Oz forged aluminum wheels, and cover the whole thing in carbon fiber, Kevlar weave, and paint the frame and swing arm gold. You stamp a number on the triple tree of every one of these bikes and send 50 of them to America, where Giuseppe then sets the price at $17,299, which in 2024 money is probably like $600,000 or something. But that was 22 years ago, and in the intervening years, the Tuono has only gotten faster, more vicious, and more expensive. It sprouted an extra 2 cylinders, shrank so that now you have to be Maverick Vignalas to ride the damn thing comfortably, and it puts down an extra 35 horsepower and has suspension that literally thinks for itself. Not a lot of bikes can claim a 22-year lineage, and even fewer can boast about being the original Hypernaked. This particular bike that we're looking at has a set of choice add-ons like the 1060 Big Bore kit, a custom tuned, less dorky mirrors than the original, and an Aero 212 undertail exhaust system to really capture that turn of the millennium sport bike look. It also has a face that looks like you just murdered its entire family right in front of its very eyes. But does this thing still hold up in a world of 200 horsepower electronic marvels, or is it just an old Italian relic that belongs in a museum? We'll answer that question after I take a quick moment to bring you the good word about today's sponsor, Quadlock. They make the best handlebar and phone mount combo and are trusted by, conservatively, a jillion riders. You know that old saying that if your buddy's gonna jump off a bridge, would you do it too? This is definitely one of those situations where you're gonna wanna give in to peer pressure. Quadlock doesn't just hold your phone to the handlebars though, they have vibration dampeners, wireless chargers, and a whole bunch of other accessories. I've always got my mag wallet on the back of the phone because if I don't have everything in one place, I definitely lose it because I have a short attention span. But so does the average YouTube viewer, so click that link down below and check out everything that Quadlock has to offer, and let's hit the road.
I usually like to leave AF1 so that I'm using the same route every single time I do one of these vlogs, but this is the vlog that seriously did not want to get made. I've had to do this 3 different times now, and you will probably notice that the camera settings are slightly different. I apologize for that. Again, this is the vlog that did not want to get made. So, that aside, remember how I said that this was a gigantic motorcycle? I wasn't joking. This is a very big bike. The side camera there is not going to do it justice, and unless you see me sitting on it, you're not going to get the scale of this thing. It's very tall. Sitting on the back of this, it's almost like I'm sitting on a ADV bike. It's very, very tall, and I actually appreciate that when I'm on the highway because it means I can, see over cars where there are any cars ahead of me to see over. And another reason why I like the fact that this is so damn big is because it's really comfortable for me. The seat to peg ratio is awesome on this. It's great. Like, all I need maybe to be perfectly comfortable is like an extra half inch. And I know that's what she said. But anyway, the pegs are just a tad low given the nature of these tank wings. There's pretty aggressive tank wings here. And if I'm getting in the pocket, I'm like smushed into this thing. I'm basically pushing the limit of what comfortable is on this bike. Any tighter and I wouldn't fit. So any tall rider on this is going to want to drop the foot pegs just a little bit. And honestly, I know that sounds like sacrilege. It's not going to make that much of a difference in terms of ground clearance on this bad boy because it's already so tall. You're not losing enough ground clearance for it to matter. This thing's also super comfortable. The seat is really wide and cushy, and I could definitely sit on this thing for a long time, not to mention the fact that these handlebars are properly high. Something like the modern Tuono, the thing is too closely based on the rarest V4, which has a really narrow seat-to-peg ratio, and the handlebars are really low and flat. This bike is definitely differentiating itself as an actual naked bike versus a sport bike with a handlebar. Power-wise, I mean, I'm just rolling in 6th gear. There's 100, 110. You know, that was just a little bit, This thing's got power for days. But the power delivery, and you'll hear me mention this a little bit later, is a lot less like a modern leader bike or anything like that. It's a little bit slower, and that's one of the beauties of this era of Vtwin. The power delivery is really friendly, and I actually super enjoy that because, you know, it's kind of hard to ride the modern Tuono. Wind protection is okay. It's kind of dumping it right at my chin, but I can sit up straight and have it blow right below my neck, and so I'm feeling good on this thing. I really am. The one knock I would have against this bike, and this isn't really a knock per se, it's just an observation. This thing tends to run really cold. It's cold-blooded. Cruising on the highway, I'm doing 168 degrees Fahrenheit here. That's too low. If you know anything about motorcycles and engines and fuel atomization, that ends up happening at roughly like 200 to 220. That's when you start getting the optimal fuel atomization. And, you know, the oil is at temperature. And, you know, 160, yeah, that's operating temperature, but I wouldn't be super comfortable running this in a lot of cold weather because I'd worry that this thing doesn't actually get to operating temperature. It's nice when I'm stuck in this kind of freaking afternoon traffic because the bike just doesn't get that hot. If I can keep it moving, it's below 180 degrees the whole time, and the fans aren't really kicking on. I'm not getting a lot of engine heat. It's nice, but, you know, there's two sides to that coin, right? And this is another situation where if the power was really savage, I wouldn't be having a good time. You know, the mid-range is so, mid-range and low-end, to be honest, is so usable that I don't feel like I'm riding a bike that has enough torque to power wheel, you know? It's really, really easy to ride, and I can't stress enough how nice that is, especially in an era where modern leader bikes they're not easy bikes to ride, man. They're not enjoyable for me. So, with that said, I'm gonna get the fuck out of this afternoon traffic and get out on the twisties because that's really where this thing's designed to be. I figured as we're waiting to get into the twisty road section, I should show you exactly how tall this bike is. You can see it right here out of the 360 that my knee is barely bent, touching the ground. Any taller and I'd have no bend in my knee and almost be flat-footing it. This has a very wide seat, which you definitely feel. I just love how these early V-twins give you such usable power. It may be a crap load, but it's effortlessly usable. That's, as we're getting into these twisties, one of the things I want to draw the comparison to the modern Tuono again. The modern Tuono is a phenomenal motorcycle, and if anybody from Aprilia is watching, I'm not dogging on this motorcycle. I'm not. It's a great bike, but it has no chill. I find it really funny that the base model Tuono has a touring mode and a, tall windscreen and all that stuff. In theory, it's supposed to be a little bit easier to ride, right? In practice, not really. Aprilia doesn't do the Ducati thing where they change their fueling so you actually get lower horsepower out of a touring mode. All it is it's just a different throttle map. It needs a completely different lower power curve, in my opinion. I love the power on this thing. I don't think it's like modern power. I feel like anybody who gets on this and they've read the specs, they saw that the RSV, Miele, and the Tuono from back in the day were making like 128 or 23. They'll get on it and they'll be like, what? That's it? That's all that's got? You could even go so far as to say, if you're really used to modern power, that the power delivery on this is lazy. But this kind of power delivery, I think, is the perfect setup for a street rider. You're not always going out and slaying twisties, as much as everybody wants to think that their, route to the office is going through the Italian Alps or whatever. No, you're usually just going through some, lazy twisties like this. And you want to just add a little power coming out so you feel the acceleration and hear the engine rev, That's the power delivery you get here. It's just that easy going, fun to dig into wall of torque. But this thing does the V-twin thing too, where when you rev it way out, like I think peak power comes on roughly like 9,500. When you rev it all the way out past that, it just falls on its face. All V-twins do that. There's nothing past the peak. It's done. And sport bike riders might not like that. They might like the over rev that you get on an inline 4. This is just it's like, nah, I'm done, shift gears now. But I don't know, I think that makes it more exciting. You're more engaged with the riding process. You're shifting gears more. And speaking of shifting gears, the transmission on this feels lovely. I really like it. I will note that when it's cold, it's really hard to get it into neutral. So, like, if you're the kind of rider who pops the bike into neutral at a stoplight, if you just started your commute or your ride and you're at a stoplight, you're going to be fiddling with this fucking thing trying to get it to go into neutral. But let's talk about, the riding performance on this. Every time I get on a modern leader bike, one of the just top spec with the fancy Öhlins suspension that's, constantly thinking for me and making precise adjustments every single second. You get on one of those and you're like, holy fuck, we have come 1,000 years in motorcycle technology. But then you get on a bike like this that's got 20-year-old Öhlins suspension. It's got, a really well, intelligently built frame, and you're like, you know what? We do what we were doing back in the early 2000s. I spoke to the previous owner of this bike. He actually works at AF1 as the finance manager, and he took it to the racetrack all the time. And he was saying, when you get on the power out of a corner, you'll dust modern leader bikes. They'll catch you in the straights because once they get in the power, this thing can't touch them. But you're gone. Like you will outrun them out of a corner every time. You can't set up to beat a 22-year-old or a 22-year more modern motorcycle. That was hard to say. Unless this bike is a very capable package, and it is, dude. It really is. But yeah, I'm still getting used to this thing. I'm not quite as comfortable taking these turns as fast as I normally would. Another part of that is because this motorcycle is number 176 of 200, and there's less than 200 available now because, you know, in the intervening 22 years, a bunch of people crashed these out, which is a crying shame. So I am babying it a little bit because I don't want to ruin a piece of motorcycling history. But don't let me being a tenderfoot make you think that this bike isn't capable. This is way more capable than I am, which is really cool. Let's take a second to talk about the brakes on this thing. We got two big honkin' stonkin' Brembos and a nice master cylinder, and yeah, it stops good. They're not perhaps the best in the business. Maybe they were the best in the business a long time ago, but these are axially mounted. They're a little bit old. But we are on stainless steel lines, and they do the trick, man. One thing I do love, and this is something I've noticed more and more as I've put miles down, the dashboard is so low. It's so low on this bike. I can't see, like I'm looking straight ahead at that Buick. I can't even see the dashboard. Like I can see this lip right here, but the dashboard is basically by my knees. So I have to look down, and what that allows me to do is just have a wide view of everything that's around me. That's actually really cool. Like, the information's there if you want it, but I don't know. Look where you're going. There's nothing on the dashboard that you need to know. But to start rounding out my thoughts, I'm stunned at how much bike you can get for the dollar with an old Tuono. And personally, I would rather own an old Tuono than a new one. Which brings me to the fun part. I own this motorcycle now. It cost me $7,500 to buy this bike, and that's mostly because it's the limited. You could get a early model Tuono for like $4,000. And if you're a big rider and you want a comfortable motorcycle that has a boatload of power that's usable on the street, this is that bike. And I know a bunch of people are going to be like, well, I don't know if I should trust a 2000s Aprilia to be reliable. Anybody who actually knows Aprilia knows that these Rotax motors were some of the most reliable motors put in an Italian motorcycle. The one thing about these bikes is they're hard to get parts for. This one's such a relic that if it were to go down, it's toast. It's done. There's nothing to replace these parts. It's not. You can't get the carbon fiber. You can't get the Kevlar. You can't get the rims. You can't get the gold frame. It's done. But, you know, older model, non-limited Tuonos, they made them for almost 10 years. The parts pool is out there. And people have essentially perfected them. Like the chip that's in this thing, the power delivery, it's so smooth. It's basically perfect. Any one that you pick up used is gonna have a lot of the good parts already on there. People have already spent the money. But yeah, I cannot speak highly enough of these early Vtwins. If you want a streetable, big power motorcycle, this is it. And would you believe it when I said that this thing only costs me $300 a year to insure? It costs me less to insure this motorcycle than it did my fucking KLR 650. You know, I'm selling the Grezzo a little bit down the line to make up the difference. I've already got a buyer lined up, and then I'm still gonna clean cash, and I'll have one less bike in the garage. Because this is just honestly, it's a do-it-all bike. And SV1000, TL1000, the RC51. There are so many high quality, the 990s from KTM. There are so many high quality early model V-twins that are out there that you really should check out. They're awesome bikes. And with that being said, I wanted to give a final shout out to Quadlock. Click that link down in the description below. Check out everything they have. They have been an awesome sponsor for the channel. Also, a big shout out to AF1 for allowing me to come in and test their bikes. And a not shout out to AF1 because every time I check out a really cool bike there, I end up buying one. I've bought 3 bikes now from AF1 in 3 years. I test out a bike every October and I'm like, I need it, I'm buying it, I'm done. But they're really cool dudes. So check out everything they got down there. Link will be in the description. And let me know your thoughts on the old bikes versus the new ones. Do you like the kind of more lazy power delivery of the older motorcycles, or do you like just that bleeding edge tech of the modern ones? I'd be interested to see where y'all end up on that. So let me know down in the comments below, and until next time, catch you later.